For our example of variance and standard deviation, I'm going to use Excel because that's actually the easiest way to do it. You can do this by hand if you want to create a table and do that, but I just find it's the easiest way to do it is with Excel. So here we've got some things we talked about. Range is the largest value minus the smaller value. That's one way we can describe variation. Another variation is variance or standard deviation. The variance is the square of the standard deviation. And these measures tell us how much the actual values differ from the mean. The larger the standard deviation, the more spread out the values. The smaller, the less spread. The measure is particularly helpful to teachers as they try to find whether their students' scores on certain tests are closely related to the class average. So to find the standard deviation, we do these things. We find the mean of the data. We find the difference, it's called the deviation, between each of these scores and the mean. We square each deviation, find the sum of the squares, divide that sum by one less than the number of the values. We call that n minus 1. And then find the square root of that, and that tells us the standard deviation. So here in our example, we're finding the variance and standard deviation of the following scores on an exam. And I've obviously not got them in here correctly. So 92, 95, 85, 80, 75, and 50. And those are our scores. So the next thing we want to do is find the score minus the mean. Actually, that's the second thing we want to do. The first thing we need to do is find the mean. So I'm just going to type down here mean equals. And we find the mean one of two ways. We can use our formulas and find the average, or we can do it by what we know. It would be equals, and then we would add these up. So 92 plus 95 plus 85 plus 80 plus 75 plus 50. And there's 6 of them, so we'll divide by 6. So we can see that the mean is 79.5. That's what we found here. So to find the difference, the score minus the mean, then we would say equals, and I'm going to take each of these scores and subtract off our mean of 79.5. And if I go down here to the bottom right and drag, it tells me each of those, and you can see it matches what we've got here on our worksheet. Next, we find the square of those. So the difference squared. I'm just going to format my cells to wrap so that everything fits. There we go. Of course, I didn't spell that correct. Okay. I still didn't. Okay, we'll go with that anyway. So to square these, then we would say equals, and I'm going to, in parentheses, put what's in this cell and raise it to the second power. And drag that down, and that finds the square. Now we need the sum of those squares. So we can just go through and click on them, or we can type sum, parentheses, and select all of those. And there's our sum, just like in the worksheet. So the sum of the squares is 1,317.5. And then to find the variance, we take that number. Let's just go down and write it here. So we're going to take this number and divide by n minus 1. And there were 6 of them, so that would be 6 minus 1, or 5. This is our variance. So that's one of the questions that this worksheet's going to ask you is, what is the variance? There it is. Then the standard deviation, I'm going to call it SD, is the square root of the variance. So I think I can put square root like that. Yep, SQRT of that number, close the parentheses, equals, and there it is. Our standard deviation to 2 decimal places would be 16.23. You can see that this is written out here as an equation, and I'm going to show you over in 143 how to work this by hand if you choose to do so. But these practice problems, you don't have to. You can pull up an Excel sheet and do it just like I did here. And any of those problems, unless I specifically ask you somewhere, which I don't think I do, to do it by hand, you can use an Excel sheet.